Sirens echoed through the hospital parking lot as a cold, silent night transformed into a stage of despair. Security cameras captured the moment an elegant-looking woman, her gaze filled with hatred, stormed into the obstetrics corridor with a bag in her hands and steps trembling with fury. No one could have imagined that behind that refined appearance lurked a pain so distorted it would turn into revenge. On the other side of the door, a young pregnant woman rested after a premature birth, unaware that the fate about to cross her path would change not only her own life, but that of an entire city. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when the first scream echoed, and what followed was chaos. Nurses running, security guards screaming, doctors trying to contain a tragedy that seemed straight out of a nightmare. Meanwhile, the news spread quickly through social media, local radio stations, and messages circulating in city groups. Woman attacked inside hospital, and billionaire husband promises justice. His name, Caio Alencar, was splashed across every headline. Owner of one of the largest construction networks in the country, Caio was known for his power, cool business dealings, and personal discretion. But that early morning, he wasn't the calculating businessman everyone knew. He was a devastated man, a father who nearly lost the love of his life, and the son he hadn't even had time to hold in his arms. And when he appeared before the cameras, his eyes teary and his voice firm, the entire country understood. It wouldn't be the police nor the ordinary justice system that would bring this story to an end. What Caio would do next would shock even those who believed they'd seen it all. Before we dive into this surprising plot, tell me which city and state you are watching us from. Leave a comment and I will respond in gratitude. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and like this video. We want to share more stories like this. The sun rose timidly over the city of Cristalina as Caio Alencar's private helicopter landed on the central hospital helipad. Reporters were already crowding the entrance, cameras and microphones outstretched, trying to wring a word from the billionaire who until that moment had always been an inaccessible figure, shrouded in mystery and power. He stepped off the plane without a word, wearing a dark suit, his expression stony, but his eyes betrayed a deep pain, the kind of pain that comes not just from loss, but from betrayal, from the absurd, and from a sense of helplessness. His every step down the corridor seemed to echo like thunder. Doctors and nurses averted their eyes, aware they were standing before a man in turmoil. His expensive perfume mingled with the smell of disinfectant, and with every meter he approached room 407, his breathing became heavier, shorter, more pent up. Inside the room, Isadora lay amid wires, tubes, and machines, her frail body a stark contrast to the serenity of her face. 8 months pregnant, she had been attacked by a woman who, until then, was just a name on a list of patients under observation. No one knew who she was until a nurse, still trembling, revealed what she had seen. The woman had entered under a false identity, carrying a small syringe hidden under a beige coat. When restrained, she screamed Caio's name with a mixture of pain and rage, as if wanting him to hear her last words. It was Mariana Duarte, the woman who had been Caio's lover for years before he met Isadora. The scandal that followed the revelation was immediate. Gossip sites, TV shows, and news portals competed to publish every detail. The headline was unanimous. Lover breaks into hospital and attacks billionaire's wife. But what no one knew was that this woman carried a secret that would change everything. Caio entered the room and knelt beside the bed, oblivious to the security guards or the flashes still coming from the hallway. He took Isadora's hand and held it against his face. Feeling the cold of her skin mix with the heat of the tears, he could no longer hold back. "You'll be okay, my love. I promise." His voice was hoarse, cracked, as if his throat burned with the weight of guilt. Because deep down, Caio knew that what had happened was the consequence of old mistakes, of choices he believed buried under the carpet of fortune. Isadora, still unconscious, seemed peaceful, as if sleeping in a forced rest. But the baby was struggling. The doctors had managed to stabilize them both, but the risk was still high. Hours later, in a private room, the police chief in charge of the case spoke cautiously. "Mr. Alencar, we found the attacker's car abandoned a few kilometers from here. Inside was a letter addressed to you." The billionaire held out his hand, and the crumpled, tear-stained paper fell into his fingers. He read it silently, but his face hardened with each line. The letter read, "You promised me love, and you gave me oblivion. I gave you everything I had, and you traded me for a girl who could have been my daughter. Now, I want you to feel the same emptiness you left in me. If I can't have your life, I will destroy its very purpose." Caio closed his eyes for a second, then slowly stood up. "Where is she?" he asked dryly. The police chief replied, "She's alive. She tried to injure herself when she was restrained, but survived. She's in custody at the public hospital." From that moment on, something changed inside Caio. The man who until then believed he controlled his destiny with money and influence realized he had lost control of the only thing that truly mattered, his own soul. He returned to his room, sat beside his wife, and remained there for hours, watching the movement of the IV, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the distant sound of the machines. Meanwhile, his lawyers were already preparing statements, his security team was trying to contain the press, and social media was abuzz with theories, accusations, and judgments. Some called him a hypocrite, others painted him as a victim. But Caio read nothing. He remained in absolute silence, staring into space, while the entire past came back like a movie he never wanted to watch. 2 years earlier, Mariana had been his personal secretary. Young, ambitious, intelligent, and above all, starved for recognition. Caio, at the height of a personal crisis after his father's death, ended up getting involved with her. It was an intense but unbalanced relationship, one of power and dependence. When he met Isadora, a volunteer doctor who treated children in underprivileged communities, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades: lightness. He decided to end the affair, and Mariana disappeared without a word. Until that night. Now everything was coming back to the surface, and Caio realized the price of silence was too high. The next morning, the hospital was surrounded by security. Journalists tried to break in, drones flew overhead, and the name Caio Alencar was the most talked about topic in the country. The city seemed divided between those who saw him as a man of faith seeking redemption and those who believed he deserved what he was experiencing. When the medical report announced that Isadora and the baby were stable, a wave of relief swept through the press. But the relief didn't reach Caio. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. He spent the early mornings standing at the hospital window, staring at the horizon, thinking about everything he had done and everything he could still do. 3 days later, he asked to see Mariana. The police chief tried to dissuade him. "She's in custody, sir. I don't see the need." But Caio was firm. "She needs to listen to me, and I need to look her in the eyes before the court decides anything." And so it was. The meeting took place in a cold room with white walls and a metal table in the center. Mariana entered handcuffed, her hair disheveled, her gaze lost. When she saw him, she burst out laughing. "Did you come to thank me? I got what I wanted, Caio. I saw you suffer." He remained silent for a few seconds, then leaned forward slightly. "You almost killed the woman carrying my child, but what killed you, Mariana, was the void you created." She spat on the floor and replied, "You never loved anyone. Not me, not her." Caio stood up slowly, straightened his jacket, and looked directly at her. "You're wrong, and you're going to find out what love is the hard way." He left the room without looking back, and the sound of the door closing echoed like a sentence. In the following days, something changed in his demeanor. The cold man gave way to a purposeful strategist. Caio began to act silently, not seeking revenge through violence, but something much deeper. He discovered that Mariana had an 8-year-old son, admitted to a state shelter after she lost custody. He discreetly had him transferred to a private clinic, ensuring treatment, schooling, and psychological counseling. No journalist knew, no employee commented. It was Caio's silent way of trying to transform hatred into something that would break the cycle. Meanwhile, Isadora began to wake up. When she opened her eyes, she saw her husband beside the bed, his face tired and unshaven. She tried to speak, but her voice faltered. He held her hand and whispered, "Don't worry, our son is fine. You're fine. And I'm learning what it means to be human." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment, the entire hospital seemed silent. The scene, captured by one of the nurses and leaked to the press, went viral within hours. The public, previously divided, began to see Caio differently. The hashtag Justice with Love spread across the networks, and the entire country was moved by the story of the billionaire who, instead of destroying, chose to rebuild. But the calm would not last. A week later, Mariana's lawyer called a press conference. He claimed she suffered from mental disorders caused by emotional abandonment, and that Caio should be held accountable for emotional responsibility. The case took on unimaginable proportions, debates on TV shows, psychologists offering their opinions, influencers divided between emotional justice and shared blame. And while the chaos unfolded, Caio remained silent until the day he decided to speak out. He called a press conference in the company's own auditorium. The seats filled within minutes, cameras rolled, journalists attentive. When he took the stage, the silence was absolute. "I made a mistake, and my mistake nearly destroyed everything I love most. I could have used power, money, and influence to protect myself. But that's not what will heal what happened. I chose to forgive because hatred is the most expensive prison there is. And I chose to care for her son because no child should pay for the sins of adults." The words echoed like thunder. Cameras flashed. Some journalists rose to their feet in emotion, and within minutes the speech became global headlines. The man who had once been a symbol of power was now a symbol of redemption. That night, back at the hospital, Caio walked down the bright hallway and stopped in front of the nursery. There was his son, small, wrapped in a blue blanket, breathing serenely. He smiled, something he hadn't done in weeks. "You'll grow up in a different world than mine, my son. In a world where love is worth more than power." And as he said this, a new feeling washed over him. Not the weight of revenge, but the lightness of justice served with compassion. Outside, the city lights shone brightly, reflecting off the glass like artificial stars. The name Caio Alencar, once associated with the coldness of business, was now remembered as the man who, faced with the greatest attack on his family, responded with something no one expected: humanity. And deep down, as he gazed out the window at the horizon, he understood that perhaps this had been the true miracle, that of a heart that, wounded by hatred, learned to beat again, this time with love. The scandal seemed to have taken on a life of its own. Within days, the hospital attack case had become one of the most closely watched stories in the country. Each new detail became fuel for a society hungry for emotion, revenge, and morality. Social media was divided between those who saw Caio Alencar as a hero, transformed by grief, and those who believed he was merely staging a calculated redemption, worthy of a man who knew the art of public image. But far from the spotlight, there was another scenario, much more human and painful. Isadora was still recovering slowly, the trauma of the attack leaving scars not only on her body, but also on her mind. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night, gasping for breath, frightened, reliving the scene when the woman had burst into the room, her eyes burning with hatred. At these times, Caio would hold her hand silently, saying nothing, simply letting his touch express what words could not, the regret, the guilt, and the fear of losing her again. However, their lives would never be the same again. After the birth of little Enzo, the couple was transferred to an isolated ward, away from the press, which still insisted on surrounding the hospital. Caio, accustomed to ruling the roost in the business world, now found himself powerless before the fragility of his wife and son. He spent hours watching the baby sleep, silently wondering what kind of father he could be after all that. Sometimes Mariana's face would come back to him, the distraught look, the sarcastic laugh, the pain hidden beneath the hatred. Try as he might, he couldn't feel only anger. There was compassion, a strange desire to understand how someone who had once been a part of his life had descended into such darkness. And perhaps it was precisely this mix of emotions that made him human again. Meanwhile, the press discovered a new angle on the story. Mariana's son, the boy admitted to a private clinic where Caio had silently provided all his care. Reporters began investigating, and when the truth came out, the public was divided. Many were moved, saying the billionaire had shown greatness of soul. Others, more skeptical, claimed it was a marketing ploy to clean up his image. But Caio didn't speak out. He simply continued caring for what really mattered: Isadora and little Enzo. He had already learned that silence is sometimes the most powerful answer. One morning, as he walked the hospital corridors, he was approached by the chaplain, a simple-looking man with serene eyes and a calm voice. "Mr. Alencar," he said, "sometimes God allows chaos to enter our lives so that we learn to look beyond the mirror." Caio listened in silence, surprised by the statement. The priest continued, "You built empires, but now you are learning to build what is invisible: forgiveness." Those words echoed in his mind like a mantra. It was as if, for the first time, someone had described exactly what he felt: the weight of a heart trying to rebuild itself after a storm. In the days that followed, Caio also began visiting the psychiatric ward of the public hospital where Mariana was hospitalized. He never revealed his presence, but watched from afar through the glass of the monitoring room. She seemed like a different person, thin, haggard, with a vacant stare. Doctors reported outbursts interspersed with long periods of apathy. Still, something inside him told him the story couldn't end there. It was then that he made an unexpected decision. He hired a team of psychologists and therapists to provide Mariana with ongoing treatment outside the public system with personalized support. "She will pay for what she did," he told one of the lawyers, "but that doesn't mean I have to be like her." While the billionaire worked behind the scenes, Isadora began her own healing journey. Despite her physical recovery, her mind was still filled with shadows. Some afternoons, she would sit on the hospital porch, gazing at the sky and wondering why God had allowed such pain to invade a moment that should have been one of joy. One of those afternoons, Caio approached her with the baby in his arms. "He sleeps like an angel," he said, trying to smile. She replied without looking at him, "But for how long, Caio? How long will the past haunt us?" He took a deep breath and sat beside her. "As long as we allow it to have that power," he replied. The conversation continued in silence, but in that pause, Isadora understood something. Love, no matter how wounded, can still blossom amidst the rubble. One night, the sound of rain hitting the windows brought back memories of the day of the attack. Isadora woke up startled, trembling, and upon seeing Caio sleeping in the armchair, she ran to him and hugged him. "I thought you were going to lose me again," she whispered. He woke with a start, but soon wrapped his arms around her tightly, whispering, "I'll never leave you alone again." It was the first time she cried without fear. They remained embraced, letting the pain flow in tears, as if each drop washed away a bit of the remaining suffering. And that morning, something was reborn between them, not the idealized love of before, but a more real, more mature love, forged in pain. But outside that room, the world remained merciless. Mariana's lawyer insisted on turning the case into a media spectacle. He claimed she was a woman destroyed by a powerful man, and that the attack was an act of desperation by an emotional victim. The hearings began to be broadcast live, and the entire country watched, divided between empathy and outrage. When the day arrived for Caio to testify, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, onlookers, cameras, all eager to get a closer look at the man who had become the symbol of revenge with compassion. Entering the courtroom, Caio appeared calm. He wore a light grey suit, no tie, and carried in his eyes the weight of someone who no longer has anything to prove. When the judge asked him to describe what he felt, he replied, "I felt anger, fear, and an absurd desire to take justice into my own hands. But if I had done that, I would have become just like the person who hurt my family." Silence fell over the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, attentive. "Do you believe in forgiveness?" the judge asked. Caio took a deep breath. "I do, but not as an escape. Forgiveness is when we understand that to continue hating is to remain imprisoned." The words echoed beyond the courtroom walls. The next day, the speech was in every newspaper, on every news program, and on social media. Thousands of people began sharing videos with the phrase, "To continue hating is to remain imprisoned." What began as a tragedy now transformed into a social movement about empathy, emotional health, and emotional responsibility. Schools, businesses, and even churches began to discuss the case as an example of human transformation. It was as if the entire country was learning from Caio and Isadora's pain. But not everyone reacted kindly. Some tried to take advantage of the situation. Rival businessmen began using the story to attack Caio, saying he had lost the focus and coolness that made him an empire. "He's letting himself be carried away by sentimentality," they said. One of them even publicly declared that a businessman can't be guided by emotions. Upon hearing this, Caio simply smiled. Because he knew he was building something much bigger than any company, he was rebuilding his own soul. At home, Isadora was finally discharged and was able to take little Enzo home. The mansion, which had once seemed cold, now had the sound of life, laughter, tears, hurried footsteps through the hallways. Caio traded his office for afternoons caring for his son and walks with his wife through the gardens. Little by little, his presence became lighter, and the shadow of the past began to dissipate. Still, he knew that complete peace would only come when he faced what remained: total forgiveness, including of himself. One day, upon receiving the news that Mariana would be tried and possibly sentenced to life in prison, Caio made a decision that shocked the country. He called his lawyer and pleaded, "I want to testify on her behalf." The man on the other end of the line almost dropped the phone. "Sir, this will destroy your image." But Caio calmly replied, "I'm no longer interested in your image. I want to end this cycle." And so he did. In court, he stated that Mariana should pay for what she did, but not be forgotten. Madness doesn't arise from nothing. It's fueled by loneliness, pain, and a lack of listening. If I had listened sooner, perhaps none of this would have happened. His words became a landmark. The judge reduced his sentence, allowing supervised psychiatric treatment. Many criticized him, saying he had been weak. Others called him a saint. But for Caio, none of that mattered. As he left the courtroom, he looked up at the sky and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. That night, Isadora waited for him in the garden. The soft lights reflected on the newly planted flowers, and the distant sound of crickets brought a sense of new beginnings. "Did you do what you had to do?" she asked with a calm smile. He nodded, looking toward the horizon. "Yes, now I can breathe." She leaned closer, rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "God's justice doesn't come with punishment. It comes with understanding." Caio smiled for the first time in a long time, his heart light. And so, under the starry sky of that city once shocked by scandal, a new chapter began. The man who had been consumed by revenge was now a symbol of redemption. The woman who had nearly lost everything now gently taught the power of forgiving love. And the child, small and innocent, slept peacefully, unaware that she had been the link between pain and miracle. What Caio did next shocked everyone, but not because of its cruelty, but rather because of the unarmed strength of a heart that chose compassion in a world that only understood revenge. Months passed, and the case that shook the country slowly began to fade into a distant memory, not because people had forgotten, but because pain, when healed, ceases to be a wound and becomes a scar. The city of Cristalina, which had been the epicenter of headlines, was now buzzing with a different kind of news. The foundation Living Again, founded by Caio and Isadora, which offered psychological support and shelter for women victims of emotional and domestic violence. The auditorium at the opening was packed. Journalists, authorities, influencers, and ordinary families watched in silence as the couple took the stage. Isadora, wearing a simple dress and a serene gaze, held a microphone firmly. "What we experienced could have destroyed us," she began, "but we chose to transform pain into purpose. And that's what this house represents, a new beginning for those who believe there is still hope." The audience rose to their feet in applause, but Caio's eyes, even smiling, seemed distant. He looked toward the back of the room, where a woman watched discreetly, her head lowered. It was Mariana. Under medical supervision, she had received judicial authorization to participate in the event as part of a social reintegration program. Fate, once again, had placed the three of them in the same space. And surprisingly, there was no anger. When Caio's gaze met hers, time seemed to stand still. There was neither hatred nor fear, only a silence filled with understanding. She smiled shyly, a tremulous smile, and lowered her head. He returned it with a slight nod, a small gesture, but one that ended years of torment. After the event, Isadora approached the woman calmly. "Did you do therapy properly?" she asked in a gentle tone that surprised even the security guards. Mariana, visibly moved, replied, "Yes, and I learned a lot about what it's like to lose. But today, I understood what it means to be forgiven." The two embraced briefly, a symbolic gesture captured by one of the cameras, and the next day made newspaper headlines with the caption, "The Forgiveness That Moved Brazil." From then on, the Living Again project gained momentum. Within a few months, new units began to appear in other cities. Caio was personally involved in every decision, but now with a different lightness. He was no longer the man who tried to control everything. He was someone who had learned to serve. Many nights, he would sit in the shelter's courtyard and talk with the women there, listening to stories of pain and resilience. Each word reminded him of the importance of choosing a different path. Sometimes he would leave in silence, walking the streets, watching the city lights reflect in the rain puddles, and feeling that, for the first time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. One day, while visiting the children's wing of the shelter, Caio came across a scene that forever impacted him. A group of children were playing with colorful blocks, and among them was a little boy with brown eyes and a shy smile. Mariana's son. The boy ran up to him and showed him a drawing, a man holding a child by the hand, with a huge sun behind them. "Is that you?" Caio asked, smiling. The boy innocently replied, "It's the uncle who mends broken hearts." Caio knelt and hugged him, feeling that in that simple gesture there was more redemption than in any sentence. The following years cemented the transformation. Caio Alencar's empire continued to grow, but now with a new philosophy. Each branch of his company had a department dedicated to social responsibility. Isadora began leading lectures and campaigns on maternal mental health, becoming a reference in the country. The couple, once a symbol of scandal, became an example of faith and reconstruction. Even so, whenever he looked back, Caio remembered the night in the hospital. The chill in the air, the sound of the alarms, the pain that made him rethink everything. He never forgot, but he learned to be grateful. "It was there that I was born again," he said in interviews, "because only those who descend to the depths discover the true value of light." Mariana, for her part, started over quietly. After serving her sentence and completing treatment, she decided to move to another city and volunteer at a rehabilitation center. She sent occasional letters to Caio and Isadora, always thanking them for the second chance. In one, she wrote, "You showed me that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but gives it new meaning. Thank you for teaching me to live without hate." The letters were never released. They were kept in a wooden box in Caio's office, a reminder that even pain can blossom when watered with compassion. Time marched on, and little Enzo grew up surrounded by love and purpose. At 5, he was already running through the foundation's hallways, giving hugs to the women who called him the Angel of New Beginnings. It was as if, unconsciously, he had inherited his parents' mission to tenderly heal the world's wounds. One afternoon, while watching his son play, Caio hugged Isadora and said, "If someone had told me back then that pain would be the path to peace, I would have laughed. But today I understand. God writes straight on the lines we bend." She smiled and replied, "And sometimes he even uses tears as ink." Their story became a book, a documentary, and even the inspiration for a TV series. But for the couple, the true happy ending wasn't in the cameras nor in the applause. It was in their simple routine. The shared coffee in the morning, the laughter in the garden, the small gestures that once seemed trivial but were now treasures. The name Caio Alencar ceased to be synonymous with power and became a symbol of humanity. The man who once swore revenge now dedicated his life to saving those in need of a second chance. And one silent night, sitting on the porch with his son in his arms, Caio looked up at the starry sky and whispered, "Sometimes God allows pain to break us just to rebuild us the right way." Enzo, curious, asked, "The right way, Daddy?" He smiled and replied, "The way love commands, my son." And so the man who once believed that power was everything discovered that true strength lies in forgiving, in starting over, and in continuing to love, even after everything. What began as a hateful attack ended with the greatest miracle a soul can experience, the miracle of transformation. And in that city that once reeled from a billionaire's revenge, another story was now being told, that of a man who learned that forgiveness is the most beautiful revenge there is. 5 years had passed since the day Caio Alencar's name dominated the headlines. Time had transformed not only his story, but also the way the country viewed power, forgiveness, and humanity. The scandal was no longer remembered as a crime, but as the turning point of a generation that learned to see mistakes as opportunities for healing. And it was precisely in this new era that Caio decided to undertake the greatest project of his life, the construction of Aurora Institute, an educational center and hospital for women and children who have been victims of violence. The chosen plot of land was on a hill on the banks of the city's river, the same place where years before he had knelt in despair, asking God not to take his wife and son. Now, that same ground would be the symbol of rebirth. On the day of the inauguration, the entire city seemed to breathe differently. Streets were decorated, schools suspended classes, and entire families walked toward the new institute to participate in the event. The main auditorium was packed, politicians, artists, journalists, but also ordinary people inspired by the story of that man and that woman. Isadora, beside Caio, wore white, the same shade she had worn at Enzo's baptism. He, in a light blue suit, displayed a serene, almost celestial expression. When he took the stage, silence fell over the room. "Exactly 5 years ago," he began, "I stepped into a hospital believing the world had ended. I saw the love of my life between life and death and felt the bitter taste of revenge burning within me. That day, I was rich in everything, but poor in soul. Today, I am here to say that true wealth lies not in what you build with your hands, but in what you transform within your heart." The audience rose to their feet in applause. The cameras captured discreet tears, emotional hugs, and looks of admiration. Isadora watched him silently, with the same gleam in her eyes, as if she knew this man had been shaped by pain until he became an example. After the speech, Caio announced that the first block of the institute would be dedicated to a specific person, Mariana Duarte. A murmur ran through the auditorium, and for a few seconds, the air seemed heavy. She was the one who taught me, the hard way, the value of forgiveness. If it weren't for the pain we caused each other, I might never have understood what it truly means to love. As he said this, Caio turned to the audience and discreetly pointed to one of the front rows. Mariana was there, now with short hair, a calm gaze and a shy smile. She stood, visibly moved, and applauded the man who once promised revenge, but chose mercy. The audience, in a mixture of astonishment and shock, rose with him. The sound of applause filled the hall like a chorus of reconciliation. After the ceremony, while everyone celebrated, Caio walked to the Institute's garden. The late afternoon sun cast golden reflections on the river, and the wind swayed the newly planted trees. Beside him, Isadora held the hand of Enzo, now 6, who ran among the flowers. "You know, Isa," Caio said, looking at the horizon, "I thought redemption was erasing the past. But I realize it's the opposite. It's looking at it with gratitude." She smiled and replied, "Because without the darkness, we would never learn to appreciate the light." The two embraced in silence, and in that moment, the sound of their son's laughter mingled with the birdsong, creating the perfect soundtrack for a new beginning. But not everything was rosy. Amid the public acclaim, there were still those who didn't accept Caio's forgiveness. Groups on social media accused him of romanticizing the crime, claiming that Mariana didn't deserve tribute. One day, a journalist asked him on national television, "Don't you think forgiving is just covering up for evil?" Caio smiled and calmly replied, "Forgiving isn't absolving. It's freeing yourself from the prison that hatred builds. I haven't forgotten what happened, but I haven't let it define me either." The silence that followed that response was more powerful than any excuse. The public, expecting a defensive reaction, found wisdom. And Caio's phrase would become a new mantra: "Forgiving is not forgetting. It is choosing not to live in chains." That same week, a documentary about Caio and Isadora's journey premiered in theaters. The title, After the Pain. The film chronicled everything from the hospital attack to the creation of the Aurora Institute, highlighting the transformation of an ordinary man into a symbol of compassion. Box offices were packed, and for the first time, a true story about love, forgiveness, and faith transcended the confines of fiction. In one of the final scenes, Caio testified, People ask me what I felt when it all happened. I answer that I felt hatred, despair, and a thirst for justice. But in the end, I understood that love is the only justice that doesn't destroy. Months later, the Institute's routine continued at full steam. Mariana worked as an auxiliary therapist, helping women undergo emotional rehabilitation. Isadora coordinated the medical department, and Caio handled administration and social outreach. The trio, once marked by tragedy, now formed the foundation of a project that saved hundreds of lives. Sometimes during nightly meetings, Caio would look at the two women and think, "Fate truly writes stories that not even the most brilliant screenwriter would dare create." One night, after a lecture on forgiveness and empathy, Caio walked alone to the Institute's courtyard. The sky was clear and the stars seemed closer than ever. He sat on a bench and closed his eyes. He could hear laughter in the distance, patients, volunteers, doctors, all there, united by a cause born of tragedy, but blossomed into love. At that moment, he felt a small hand touch his shoulder. It was Enzo holding a drawing. "Look, Daddy," he said enthusiastically. "I drew a picture of our family and Aunt Mariana too." Caio looked at the paper and saw 4 figures holding hands under a large yellow sun. His smile widened and small tears fell. "It's beautiful, my son. It's perfect." In that simple image drawn by a child was the sum total of everything Caio had learned. True love doesn't divide, it adds. Forgiveness doesn't weaken, it liberates. And pain, when embraced, can become the most fertile seed of all. As he stood, he looked up at the sky once more and murmured, "Thank you, God, for breaking me, because only then did I learn to be whole." And that night, as the lights of the Aurora Institute shone like beacons on the hill, the city that had once witnessed tragedy now beheld the most beautiful revenge, the revenge of a heart that chose to love when the world expected hate. The story of Caio, Isadora, and Mariana was no longer about pain, betrayal, or scandal. It was about resilience, faith, and the certainty that even the deepest wounds can blossom into grace. And so, amid the distant sound of the river and the laughter of a child, the cycle ended. Not with an end, but with a new beginning. Because in the end, the greatest lesson of that story was simple and eternal. No darkness is capable of extinguishing the light of those who decide to forgive. Time passed, and the Aurora Institute became a beacon of hope, known throughout the country as the place where broken lives found shelter, purpose, and a new beginning. The streets of Cristalina were no longer remembered for the tragedy that once marked them, but for the faith that blossomed there. The story of Caio, Isadora, and Mariana inspired thousands of people who came from all over, seeking not only help, but a new perspective on themselves. It was common on Saturday mornings to see entire families visiting the Institute, learning about the projects, attending lectures, and hearing stories of women who, like Isadora, survived pain and chose to rewrite their own destiny. The town, once small and forgotten, had become a symbol of resilience and humanity. In that same courtyard where the wind danced among the flowers and the sound of children echoed through the hallways, Caio walked slowly, now with grey hair and a calm expression. With each step, one could see in his eyes the gleam of someone who had finally found peace. He was no longer the billionaire surrounded by luxury and power, but a man of simple soul, whose greatest fortune was the love he had built in every life he touched. Sometimes, he would stop to watch the children playing and remember Enzo, now a 17-year-old, tall, generous, and curious. The boy born amid pain had become the symbol of a new beginning, studious, charismatic, and with his father's firm gaze, but his mother's soft heart. On that special day, the Institute celebrated its 10th anniversary. The large auditorium was decorated with white flowers and golden lights, Volunteers, former patients, families, and representatives from various social institutions filled the space with laughter and emotion. Isadora, still with the same serene smile, prepared her closing speech. Beside her, Mariana, now a trained psychologist and director of the emotional support department, arranged some papers, nervous but happy. They had become close friends, bonded not by guilt or the past, but by the understanding that true forgiveness is the kind that transforms enemies into bridges. When the clock struck 6 o'clock, the event began. The lights dimmed, and a large screen displayed images from the Institute's first decade. Women being welcomed, children playing, families reuniting. Each scene was a vivid portrait of faith and new beginnings. Then Isadora took the stage to a standing ovation. 10 years ago, she began, we believed that love could rebuild what pain destroyed. And today, as I look at each face here, I see that we were right. Her voice trembled, but it was firm. Forgiveness is not forgetting what was done to us. It is choosing to no longer carry the weight of what we cannot change. And that is what we did. We transformed suffering into a mission. The audience was moved. Discreet tears flowed, and even the cameras seemed to respect the reverent silence that fell over the room. Then, Caio was called to the stage. He walked slowly, to intense applause, and for a moment he looked up at the illuminated ceiling, as if silently thanking God for allowing him to reach this point. He took the microphone and began, "A long time ago, I thought pain was a punishment. Today I understand it was an invitation to change, to feel, to understand that power without love is empty. This institute was born from my greatest fall, and if it exists today, it is because one day someone taught me, with tears and blood, what compassion is." At that moment, he turned to Mariana and Isadora. The two stood and embraced amid applause from the entire audience. "You were the mirror of my humanity. One showed me what love is, the other what forgiveness is. And together, you taught me that the richest man is the one who can rest his head on the pillow in peace." The words echoed throughout the auditorium, and for a few seconds, time seemed suspended. No one moved, no one took a deep breath, they just felt. Then, as if fate itself had given its signal, the stage lights turned golden, reflecting on their emotional faces. After the speech, a surprise video began to play. It was a montage prepared by Enzo and the volunteers, showing testimonials from women whose lives had been transformed by the Institute. "I arrived here without believing in anything anymore," said one of them. "Today, I'm a mother, I work, and I teach other women to rise up." Another stated, "What Caio and Isadora did for us wasn't charity. It was true love." The video ended with a phrase spoken by Enzo himself. "My parents' forgiveness taught the world that love is the only inheritance that never ends." Caio, overcome with emotion, wiped away his tears and hugged his son in front of everyone. The audience rose to their feet in long, sincere applause, the kind that comes from the soul. Mariana also cried. Isadora smiled, and the entire audience felt that this moment wasn't just the end of a story. It was the celebration of something greater, the victory of good over evil, of light over darkness, of faith over despair. When the event ended, it was already night. The stars shone brightly on the roof of the Aurora Institute, and the wind blew gently as if the heavens themselves were blessing the place. Caio, Isadora, Enzo, and Mariana stood alone in the courtyard, watching the lights reflect off the artificial lake that surrounded the garden. "Do you remember that night in the hospital?" Isadora asked softly. "How could I forget?" he replied, staring at the star's reflection in the water. "But you know, today, when I think of her, I no longer feel pain. I feel gratitude." She smiled and added, "That's when God began to write what we're experiencing now." Mariana, overcome with emotion, placed her hand on their shoulders and said, "I thought forgiveness was the end of my story, but I discovered it was the beginning." Caio looked at them both and replied, "And it was the beginning of all of us." The three of them stood there in silence, gazing up at the sky. And in the serene reflection of the water, the lights of the Institute formed a symbol of hope, as if each bulb represented a soul that chose not to give up. That night the world slept more soundly, because in a small town called Cristalina, a man who once swore revenge showed the planet that true justice is born not of anger, but of love. And as the garden flowers swayed in the wind, a new dawn began to rise. A dawn that promised more than new beginnings. It promised eternity. And so, Caio Alencar's story didn't end with the sound of sirens, but with the silence of peace. The billionaire who once sought revenge was now remembered as the man who taught the world to forgive, and the echo of his journey lived on, transforming hearts, one life at a time. Because in the end, revenge may begin a story, but it is forgiveness that transforms it into a legacy. And if this story spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Also, share this video with someone you love. Click now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories that we are already preparing with great care for you. Remember, every like, every subscription, and every comment helps us reach more people and keep this mission of touching hearts through stories alive. So be part of this family that grows every day. And never forget, you too are the protagonist of your own story.